I have cancer and only have 2 years to live.
I told my husband's family what the Kaidi 30 had just told me in the hospital's zero booth. I expected them not to speak to a woman who had been told only a few years to live, but I was wrong.
Yay. The 11 get life insurance then?
My husband's family was very happy the news. I don't usually get angry, but when those words, I lost my temper and was sick to my parents' house. 3 years later, I received a call from angry husband's family.
It's too late for you to find out now.
My name is Natalie. Ever since I was a little girl, I've been the quiet type. So it's always been difficult for me to get along with the people around me. I was often bullied and had no friends, spending most of my school days studying. In junior high school, I was bullied in a way that an unpopular student had to confess his feelings to me and go out with me. Of course, I have tried changing my eating habits before, but nothing seemed to work, and I eventually gave up. I tried all kinds of diets, but none seemed to work. I tried things like supplements with the money I earned from my part-time job, but they all failed. At home, my mother was divorced and raising me as a single mother. So I talked to her about my problems that I didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble for my mother, who was trying to do everything on her own. She would ask me about school, but always lie and say that I was having time with my friends. However, I was able to get pretty G grades, probably because I worked to see my studies in such an environment. With this, I might be able to get A and repay my mother. Thinking that, I desperately went to job interviews at famous companies. I eventually got a job offer from those famous companies and started right after graduating from college. I made some good friends at the started living on my own while I was 6 home to my mother. 3 years after joining the company, I was asked to go on a group blind date for the first time in my life. There I met my current husband, Logan, who was a handsome man. Logan is the complete opposite of me, as he's a mood maker at the blind date and plays it cool with the girls. In other words, if I am the shadow, light, whenever I was asked about anything blind date, I would blurt out a simp and made sure I didn't stand out. I couldn't get used to the atmosphere halfway through blind date, so I said I was going to go for a walk and went outside the restaurant. While I was taking in the fresh air, Logan approached me and we had a conversation. This is how I met my husband. I had girls keeping an eye on me from day one, but I wasn't afraid because there was always someone to protect me. Not long after we started dating, I got married and Logan became my husband. But I had no idea at the time that of happiness would turn into a night.
Excuse me, Natalie. I've always told you to finish clear morning, haven't I?
It's impossible to work efficiently, body like that.
My mother-in-law, who is sarcastic, and my sister-in-law, who makes fun of me. These two people never tire of making offensive comments to me every day. Since I got married, I've been living with my husband and mother-in-law, and I pay all the living expenses and utilities. My sister-in-law comes to visit our house occasionally to make fun of me. Our house is newly built, which IBC, happy married life with my husband. It's the opposite of the happy life envisioned, though. My husband does everything related to our living, comes home late at night. Even though he knew about my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's importance in my life, he never showed any signs of jealousy or dislike towards them like he did when we were dating. Ever since we got married, my life like this every day. Perhaps because of this stress, my not been so good recently. I was sluggish, feverish, sometimes a difficulty breathing. And was frequently anemic, which was terrible. But every time I asked my mother about going to the hospital, she always said the same thing.
You can't take care of yourself because you're sloppy figure. Do you really need to go to the hose?
I was treated the same way at home as a student, even at my age. It is very hard to find a place and rest in the house I live in. My husband, who used to always help me, has now joined my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's side. There's no place for me anymore. I thought that every day, so I didn't rebel. I spent money, worked, and wanted my husband's family, not for myself. I realized along the way that he had me pegged as a money grubber because my salary was very good. I was honestly angry, but I didn't have the courage to divorce him and go back to my parents' house. So it has stayed this way. Even though I knew that my husband was involved with several women and that my mother-in-law had a gambling habit, I pretended to ignore it. I had all the evidence I needed but my lack of courage prevented me from revealing it. However, if the opportunity arose, able to proceed smoothly with this. With that in mind, I kept it in a safe place. The stress of my daily life increased day by day, and I finally at work. I found myself in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. I did not know why I was in the hose. Soon after I woke up, a nurse came, followed by my doctor.
Are you feeling all right?
Yes, I am fine.
Have you felt any physical discomfort anywhere recently? Tiredness or nausea, for example?
In response to my doctor's question that I had been sluggish, fever, sometimes had difficulty breathing, frequently anemic. The doctor told me that I would be at the hospital for a few days after I collapsed at work, my boss found me right away and called an ambulance. The people at work have been very so I must thank them later. But to be honest, I was kind of glad have to go home while I was in the no mother-in-law to nitpick and be every day, and no sister-in-law to boss me around. That night, I had my best sleep in years. However, I had a bad cough at break, did not feel very comfortable. Just the day after I was brought to hospital, I began to notice more and discomfort in my body, and I talked doctor about it. The doctor said he would extend my stay and do a detailed examination. At this time, I had no idea what was to my body. 2 days later, when the tests were placed, I began to feel my muscles sick. The doctor told me to stay in hospital for a month. I hadn't contacted anyone yet, but should tell my family, so he decided home.
Hello, this is Natalie. I'm calling because I'm actually going to the hospital for a month.
Oh, really? It's so peaceful without taking care of it. Just please make sure to do the usual payments.
My mother-in-law answered the phone immediately, hung up without saying anything, except that she had heard I was going to be in hospital. Well, I expected that, so I wasn't surprised. While being sarcastic, she asked me, sure I paid the bills. I wondered what they would do if I didn't pay the rent, utilities, and other bills. I also happened to find out in the cleaning up the house that my mother actually owed a lot of money. She had been putting off paying back that debt for so long that it had gotten to the point where she asked me to make a payment. It was shortly after we got married, wasn't that bad. But after I promised this payment, her attitude changed drastically. Looking back, I really wonder why I promised. However, not knowing what she would do next and not having any other option, I was forced to listen to my mother-in-law. Then, 2 weeks after I was hospitalized, a doctor came to my room.
Good morning, Miss Lopez. I'm here to tell you the results of tests.
Thank you very much. How are they?
It is a very serious matter, but you cancer.
For a moment, my thoughts stopped. It would be hard to accept being told that I had cancer. However, I had to accept it, consider sudden abnormality in my body. A real disease is when a healthy person becomes worse and worse. At first, I thought it was just fatigue, but the true diagnosis can only be made after an examination. No one would know. The doctor told me that I was already at a critical point and that I would only live for a few years, roughly 2 to 3. That's what I was told. 2 years to live. That sounds like long time, but it is very short. What shall I do now? That may be the thought of those who have been told life expectancy. In my case, I regretted my life first. I was harassed and ridiculed because of my body shape, but I was with a good job. I thought I met someone nice and that it would change my life, but that was short-lived. I had more problems I had to face at my life was the same as before. My life is too painful to tell.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Can I stay at home for the rest of...
As long as you come to the hospital and take your medicine every day, be possible.
The doctor allowed me to stay at home was to return home in a few days. But I had to tell my family that I told I only had few years to live. Even my mother-in-law, who had been to me, would probably be a little wary of me. I made a phone call thinking that, of course, that never happened.
I have to tell you, I have been diagnosed with cancer and have only 2 years to live.
Yay. I-11 get life insurance then? I have to think about what I'm going with that.
My mother-in-law seemed very happy that I had so little time left to finish. My sister-in-law, who was listening behind, was also so pleased that I had called her from the other end of the phone. Why don't these people have even a good heart? And then I heard my husband's voice. Sounded like he must have just returned from a long trip.
Hey, you're home. Natalie says she has only 2 years to...
Seriously?
My husband, who I thought married love for each other, laughed about. Why did I fall in love with such a... Many things were going around in my head. I had reached my limit. The moment I felt that, my blood rushed to my head, and for the first time, I saw a...
Your relative has been given a life expectancy of 6 months to 2 years. How can you people reach that? For your information, I will not be home from now on.
You don't have to come back, but can you please pay the bills, okay?
I am left with silence in the quiet phone space. Tears welled up in my eyes as I stifled a sob on the phone. I felt frustrated, strained, and sad. These emotions were flooding my eyes. I wondered if this is how family's supposed to be. Why do I always end this? I must change. I can't be the same now. I went from feeling sad to feeling finally had a chance to change. I had always listened to what others had never been able. To move forward, I didn't have confidence in myself. If I don't change now, I will just keep those bad memories forever. By expressing my anger towards others first time, I finally started to move forward. I will change. With this, I returned to my parents the day I was discharged from the...
I'm home. Mom, I'm sorry I came home.
I was about to cry when I saw my own face. She hugged me slowly and welcomed me back home. She's my favorite, most trusted and respected person. I was crying, but I told her what had happened at home and explained everything. I also told her that after I collapsed at work, I was hospitalized and after having only 2 years to live. My mother was shocked and saddened news. However, she strongly told me to hay for life and not to give up. I intend to move forward so that I can look back without regrets. But, of course, I do want my life to be over in 2 years. I have packed all the evidence of my husband's family, his affairs, and my mother-in-law's debts in my hospital bag. I am glad I was vigilant about these because they could have been thrown while I was gone. My mother also seemed to be willing me consult with lawyers and others. Decided to work out the sequence of and what to tell them beforehand. And then there was the life insurance policy that we were so happy about. I looked it up on the internet and found out that it is possible to change the beneficiary. So I decided to make my mother the beneficiary of this insurance. Since I have no children, this would best way. And from the next day, I was busy. After a while, I returned to work at home with my mother and friends, but most of each day was spent in bed. In the meantime, I didn't hear from my husband's family, which probably means they too are spending their time now with their own families. I realized that 3 years had already passed. I had 2 years to live, but I continued going to the hospital and taking my medication without forgetting, and I was able to last that long. The symptoms of my cancer are under control, and my body is recovering slowly but surely.
I wondered what would happen after you didn't have long to live. But for you, Natalie, and you look so beautiful.
My mother said, smiling at me with her eyes. While I've been busy since then, I've done a good job of improving myself. I knew I had to change because I was living a healthy lifestyle, free of stress from my husband and family. I successfully lost weight and changed my diet so dramatically that it was hard to recognize myself. Even at work, people were talking how much I had changed, and I was well prepared with my law books. Suddenly, the phone rings. The caller is my husband.
What are you doing right now? Our house is in a lot of trouble. What happened to the insurance money?
My husband called me and started talking about debt collectors coming to their house, complaining about the fact that the electricity and gas had been cut off. He says that his mother has a headache because of the debt collectors, and she's been lying to them that the debt was created by him.
Why should I care about the people been laughing at me?
What the hell?
My husband sounded a mixture of surprise, anger at my aggressive remarks, and I guess he wanted to. Who do you think you are when I took you in, when nobody else would take care of you? In the past, I would have been scared to death the moment my husband called, but now I'm not afraid anymore.
Also, I won't pay the rent for you. If you don't move out of that house end of the day, you will be evicted.
My husband snaps at me on the phone, and I hear my sister-in-law getting angry from far away as well. I had him put the phone on speaker, explained from beginning to end about the debt, about my husband's, and the numerous ways they have harassed me. I have always wanted to tell my husband's family everything, but I have never been able to tell them. My husband and sister-in-law listened to what I had to say and didn't say anything until I finished. They probably had nothing to go back on. And all of this had already been done with the lawyer, and that the lawyer would soon go to my husband to proceed with the divorce.
Natalie, I am sorry for everything done, so please forgive me. I can't do anything without you.
It's too late to realize that now. Besides, it's my money that you need to, right?
That's not true. The truth is that I was grateful, but my mother and sister threatened me.
My sister-in-law snapped at my husband after hearing that statement. Even I could tell right away that the statement was a lie. I was amazed at how easily he could lie with such ease. I am sure my husband will get the CC shoulder from his family after I'm talking. My in-laws were a mess. This is what they deserved.
Nothing you can say will change my... Please proceed with the divorce with my lawyer.
Natalie is a freelance writer, editor, and content strategist based in Toronto. She has written for publications including The Globe and Mail, CBC News, and Chatelaine.
I pressed the end call button. My fingers were trembling, and I felt strength drain from my body all at once. For the first time, I took the initiative to end a relationship that had been harassing me. Tears well up in my eyes as I realize that I have done so much for others, but never thought about doing something for myself. My mother was right there beside me, talking on the phone. She hugged me and praised me for my work. Her kindness filled my heart, and I ran into my mother's arms. The tears were not tears of sadness, but tears of joy that I had changed. It was clear to me that at this moment, I was not the same person I had been before, and my consciousness faded away as these words behind.
Thank you, Mother.
I woke up 3 days later. My body was equipped with various May, and thanks to the oxygen mask, I could breathe, but I could not speak. I kind of understood the situation, overheard my mother and the doctor sitting near my bed.
This is probably her last moment.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Oh, I'm close. I was calm, as if I knew.
Natalie is a freelance writer, editor, and content strategist based in Toronto. She has written for publications including The Globe and Mail, CBC News, and Chatelaine. You did great.
She looked at me with pain in her eyes as she squeezed my hand as hard as she could. Then she patted me on the head. I wanted to say something to her, but the hardest part was that I couldn't even look at her. I couldn't even move my body freely. I wanted to express my gratitude to my mother, who was closest to me in so many ways.
Natalie, after that, we were able to divorce for you. It was because you worked so hard.
My mother tells me many stories but even her words are becoming more distant from me. I can only hear the sound of the Mac surrounding me. I felt my consciousness fading away, knew it was the end. I squeezed my mother's hand back with a bit of strength, and I mouthed, "Thank you." God gave me a chance to change, and I properly accomplished that chance. So I don't have a single regret. If there is a next life, I would like to be reborn as myself again.
I was told